All right, guys, welcome back to another edition of the Spread Effect Show. Joined today by Phil Nottingham from London, as you can see in the upper right hand of his screen, possibly. What's going on, Phil?
Hi, how you doing? Yeah,
Good,
all
good,
very well,
good.
thank you.
You probably know Phil from the blogosphere, from Moz, from Distilled. He's a video marketing expert, probably one of the world's foremost experts on video marketing, particularly how it applies to our world of SEO. And I kind of wanted to have him on today and talk something a little bit different. We're usually kind of talking about traditional link building and content marketing on here. We had Brent Satoris on last week to talk social, and now we're talking video here with Phil. So, Phil, I was reading some of your posts, most recent ones on Moz, and maybe some recaps from your most recent speeches. And one thing I think that a lot of people in our audience, have a problem with video is it seems like it's something that's hard to create. Like it takes more time and effort and tools, and maybe even an on-screen personality that they don't have. You kind of think of the traditional SEO being somebody who's got an outsourced team of freelance writers who's creating keyword stuff content and trying to get that published, and videos like just another leap that they're not able to make. What are some easy ways to try to get over that hump and make video part of your SEO campaign?
Sure, and I think that that's true to a greater or lesser extent. I think that there is like quite a big barrier to get started, and it is in some senses difficult to just produce a small amount of video than it is a small amount of text.
Yeah.
But I think actually when you get down to it, it isn't that different from making high quality content, whether you're doing video or sort of infographics, or whether you're doing text and stuff. And that specific form factor, it's much easier to do really, really terrible text and think that it's still acceptable. And I think actually that what a lot of SEOs have done is just kind of spammed one thing or another and done a load of crappy infographics or a load of crappy text. And actually, it's really obvious when you do crappy video. And I think that people are kind of reluctant to do that because they know that the barrier to doing it well is hard. But I think actually the barrier to doing text really well, and if you're outsourcing to a bunch of freelance writers, that can be very difficult. But I think video shows up those faults much, much easier than actually a lot of the other form factors.
Right.
So if you're trying to get going with it, I think that actually, much like you would with any level of design or with writing, I think you just get started and give it a go, conscious that the first few efforts that you're going to play with or have a go with are going to be bad, and accept that it's going to take you a while to get into the flow and get into the flow of stuff. But the more you do it, the better you're going to get. And actually, just starting simple with like a talking head video, almost like exactly what we're doing now, is a great way to get started. Google Plus, Hangout on Air, Skype, any of that. Just think big and start small. Think,
Right.
okay, I'm going to go do that sort of great big ad one day, but then just start by doing something simple, and you'll soon learn about the principles of timing, of basic editing of sound and visual and all that stuff. And bear in mind, the video is just essentially a form factor, and there's a lot of things you can do with it. So it obviously integrates an element of music, an element of visual, an element of written content, of sort of conceptual stuff as well. So if you can just start to consider that you have all those elements to play with, you can start to realize that there's a lot of things you can do very creatively. And actually, I think that just recognizing that actually as SEOs or as marketers or whatever, we're going to need to get better at doing this kind of stuff. And I think you realize that it's something that you just have to get over that initial leap and try your best and be willing to fail for the first few times.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially with the trends in SEO in general. Like you can't fake it anymore anyway. So I think people should be used to hearing that sort of conversation. You're right. It's a good point that no matter if you're doing text or video or whatever, you can't do all the stuff that used to be so easy and
Sure, although I
scalable.
think, interestingly, I can guarantee that the more people, as video is becoming a more common thing, lots of people are thinking, oh, we need to do video. There's going to be a lot more companies doing really, really bad video. Like we saw, like infographics, they used to be great. It used to be like something that people would kind of just do genuinely because they thought it was interesting, and then
Yeah.
SEOs got hold of it and started spamming everything. And I'm sure that will happen again with video. In fact, it's already happening to a greater or lesser extent. But I encourage people out there, don't go down that route. If you want to kind of do this stuff properly, you're going to see outsized returns from doing something really, really well and taking the time to invest in it, rather than trying to find the quick wins and outsourcing everything and doing all that kind of stuff. If you actually want to do something properly, it's worthwhile learning how to do it, finding some good freelancers to work with if you can, if you need to, or hiring some good people in-house, depending on kind of what your resources allow you to achieve.
Okay. One other trend I was thinking about with this is like just the trend of authorship. Over the last couple of years, people kind of bought in from an SEO perspective that you need to become like a trusted industry expert voice in your industry. You need to go out there and not only start blogging on your site, but be blogging on third-party sites, trusted third-party sites, and build yourself up as a trusted expert, for lack of a better term. How can someone maybe use video to do that? Because I think the production, like you mentioned, the production barrier to doing something like a talking head is low. Have you seen someone like deploy that in a way that like would help more instill them as an industry expert in their field by doing video, and it's kind of different than writing? It's maybe a little more effective or different than things other marketers are doing?
Sure, yeah. So I'll kind of, there's so many different great points there. I'll try and like cover them off.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the sort of thought leadership stuff, as you might call it, is definitely been a valuable marketing tool for a number of different industries. I don't think it's always going to be something that every company needs to do, but if you are maybe in a B2B space, or you're in a space where there is like a service industry, certainly that level of expertise is going to be a great way to market yourself. And if you have that skill in-house, you have that knowledge, it's about just finding the people who know that stuff and almost getting them to be better performance. I think video is very much a way of scaling people. So if we think back over the last kind of 100 years, actually there was Chris Savage, who's the CEO of Wistia, did a fantastic talk at our conference recently in San Diego about this. If we think back sort of the last, I don't know, 1,000 years or whatever, a human face was always involved in the selling of something up until the internet. Up until the 90s or whatever, like you'd always have a relationship with somebody in order to purchase whatever that might be. And it's only since like phones and the internet that we've kind of lost that human element, and video is a great way to scale people. And that doesn't mean everybody has to be a world-class actor, but it does mean that you have to be able to portray some honest persona. And the kind of thought leadership type stuff is a fantastic way of doing that. A really, really nice example of a company doing it in a way that you may have not considered is a company called Appliances Online. Their website is AO.com. And they've got an amazing selection of product videos that are basically just, they actually have real experts. Their company sell white goods, washing machines, fridge freezers, that kind of stuff. So what they've done is they've just taken people who actually know about this stuff because they work in a shop and they know the difference between different makes of fridges and freezers, and they've done videos with them explaining, okay, the advantages of this specific video is there, this specific fridge freezer is this, and it's very much like you've walked into the shop and actually spoken to somebody. And that can be so simple, and yet it is thought leadership because you're providing that unique knowledge that other people don't have, and you're providing it in a very accessible, interesting way that allows somebody to, in a sense, build that relationship without actually having to meet a sales representative. And then if you're like in a B2B space like I am, then actually sort of it's very similar to blogging. So Mars Whiteboard Fridays are the classic example of it's literally just a whiteboard and somebody who knows what they're talking about giving some good information out, and it's one camera, one shot. It's like super simple. So I think that it's the key to making that kind of content good is actually once you've got the basic production right, once you've got reasonable audio, get yourself a lapel mic or something. Reasonable camera. You don't have to spend more than a couple $100, and then it's simply just about actually working out a good way to say something effectively and finding somebody with that unique knowledge and finding a way to present it. And it's slightly different process to writing a blog post because obviously you go through that sort of iterative process of just having a load of text and then tweaking it, refining it until you can press the push live button. But in a sense, you need to sort of do that before you even film with video. And then it's just about kind of that editing process on top of that to make sure that you're happy with how it looks and how it turns out. And then you just press the publish button again. So it's a form factor, but I think it can be a great way to scale that interpersonal relationship that you lose often when dealing with businesses and companies of all types.
Yeah, I like the example of using like people inside your company that are already kind of having these conversations or talking about the products every day. You don't have to think of it like you have to hire a professional actor or script something amazing. It's probably just having them do what they do every day just with the camera on them. And that's probably the best, most natural type of content that you could generate sometimes for some companies. I like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I actually think.
Sorry, go ahead.
I actually think in most instances you don't want to be hiring actors to do that because it's dishonest, and it just comes across as dishonest. People aren't expecting; they're not going to your website to watch a Hollywood film. They're going to your website to get some information about something, more than likely. So actually having the actual person who knows about this stuff is going to be the most genuine, most honest way to do that, and it will come across that way. Like everybody can see through it when you hire some sort of actor just straight out of college to talk about B2B marketing. You know that like they don't know anything about this, and what you want to see is that actual person who you are. In some senses, if you're giving them your money or you're going to sign up for their mailing list, you are engaging in some reciprocal relationship, and you want to know something about them. So I don't. But equally, there will be some people who are better at this than others. And if you have those people in your company, obviously you can try and push them to do more and help other people who aren't so good at performing, help them with the writing, all that kind of stuff. But I would really encourage people to just, use those public-facing individuals that they do have in the company. Think about who are your sales reps. They're probably very good on the phone, which means they're probably going to be very good on video. It's no different.
Right. Yeah, I tried that. I used to be CMO of a big mortgage company, and we had all of our loan officers try to like shoot personalized videos that we would send via email to the borrower after they pre-qualified and introduce themselves because we were remote. And we also hired 3 actors, and I thought the actors would be like a fail-safe in case one of the guys like wasn't very good with the script, and the actors ended up sucking, and we ended up just using the actual loan officers. So that was a nice hard lesson for me not to hire actors.
Sure. I know, like actors can be great for some things if it's a bit more creative, if it's something that does have that story that you've sort of defined, so like an ad or whatever. But I think for the vast majority of sort of thought leadership informational stuff, you want, or product videos or whatever, you want the actual people who are experts in this thing. It's sort of a weird, because we tend to think of, okay, we want to get the best people for the job, and that's going to be actors or great performers. But weirdly, it's often just that knowledge is much more important and much more critical than performance in a sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, you mentioned Wistia, and I saw some content you've put out, not only like lauding their tool, but also lauding or promoting the fact that there are reasons to use YouTube and reasons not to, depending on your goals. I think you can talk a little bit about that, because we tend to rely pretty heavily on YouTube as a publishing platform, although sometimes our goals are more focused on links and traffic, and I think you've pointed out some good pitfalls to doing that.
Sure, yeah. I think with a lot of marketers and SEOs, actually, there's a tendency to just think, YouTube equals video. It's got the biggest reach, therefore we want all the content on there. But I think that's a sort of slightly lacking in, it doesn't really have any strategy, that perspective, because of course YouTube is a big publishing platform, but it's not the only place that you can be putting video. And really what happens is if people sort of think of video as a content type rather than a media type, as a form type, if they just go, oh great, we've got video now, what do we do with it? Then what happens is they sort of go, okay, we need to optimize this video, so we want to get everything for it. We want to get traffic, we want to get, and therefore they sort of put everything on YouTube. But really I think actually the only way to be really successful with video is to work out what you're trying to do before you even start creating the content. So taking a goal-driven strategy. And what that means is when you actually know what you want to achieve, the kind of hosting question is so obvious for you, because if you're trying to drive traffic, YouTube's not going to be the best place for your content. While YouTube will give you the biggest reach because it allows it to be on sort of the big YouTube search platform and all the recommendations, and it will integrate well with Google search. It will mean that in most instances, the YouTube version of your video is going to rank, that people are going to share the YouTube version of videos, that's where the traffic's going to essentially go. And if you're trying to drive sales or something, then that's not particularly a good idea, because nobody can buy your product from a YouTube page. So they have to then click another link back to your landing page, and it's like adding somewhere in the conversion funnel. And probably that video won't even make sense on YouTube at all. If it's a product-focused piece of content, like nobody goes to YouTube and says, "Oh, I'm looking for B2B software recommendations." Like it's not what it's for. You go there to be informed or entertained by video. So it's as much a sort of community directory as much as it is like a video hosting platform. I think that it's just a silly mistake that comes from not really actually thinking about what the content's for when we just go, let's put everything on YouTube. Now, YouTube is really, really good for certain types of content. So if you're doing something that's maybe a bit more informational, that's not directly tied to your brand, that the key is that it has to make sense outside of the context of your website or page. Because if it doesn't make sense outside the context of your page, it shouldn't be viewed outside of the context of your website page, which is what will happen if you put it on YouTube. So you kind of have to ask yourself, is it more important that I have the greatest possible reach? And if you're doing something like a viral video or an ad or something that makes sense without prior knowledge of that company, then that of course makes complete sense. But if you're trying to specifically drive traffic, drive sales, drive links back to your site, then it's not going to be the right option. And similarly, it doesn't make sense either to do both in most instances, because you're just cannibalizing your strategy. If you put something on YouTube and your own site, and it's like a product video that's sort of very tightly focused on a specific term, then you'll find that the YouTube video will sometimes rank rather than your page, and it's just not very strategic. Similarly, kind of, if you embed the YouTube version of the video on your site, you're going to be optimizing it best through those views, through those embeds, for its presence on YouTube. So I very much advocate like a goal-driven strategy when it comes to hosting. And every time I get that question of where to host my video, it's always, my question is, well, what are you trying to achieve? And you need to take that step back. And it's a clear indication to me always, if people don't know the answer to that question, that their video is not very well created and hasn't been targeted, because you always need to ask yourself that question, like, why are we doing this? And every time you're just creating it for creating its sake, it's just not going to be good for any specific business goal, so you won't get any material value from it. And I get a lot of companies that will have say, okay, we've got this video resource and we've put it on YouTube, and we've now how do we get something out of it? And it's just completely the wrong perspective. You need to be working out what you're trying to achieve before you try and optimize something. So
would you buy into the strategy of like hosting a video on multiple platforms to try and optimize them all to kind of take up a search result and have at least be your video instead of a competitor? I know that's kind of a low level bush league kind of tactic, but
yeah, I no, not really, because I think it's kind of crappy. And I just can't see any. I've never seen an instance where I thought that was a great idea. And what I would rather suggest people do is if you're trying to dominate a SERP, then like it's no different to just having lots of good pages relevant about that in a sense. But obviously you need to make sure they're not cannibalizing. And I can see maybe a couple of places where you might say, well, I could do guest content here. It's the same kind of thing as imagine YouTube is like guest posting versus writing a blog post for your own site. That's a fairly rational distinction. There's reasons to guest post and there's reasons to like do a blog post on your own site, and you don't tend to post it in both places because it's just kind of like it's a bit crappy. Like there's nothing stopping you to do it, but it's just not particularly well. It's not very strategic, and it's not a fantastic idea. So what I would say is, if you want to do that, then just do different videos. So you can just re-edit stuff to make it relevant for that platform. And actually, I do recommend that if you are so set on the idea of, okay, I need content, I've only got one type of content, but I need it on both YouTube and my own site, and I need to host it and all that sort of stuff, then just re-edit it. So typically the version of the video that's going to be relevant on a landing page or a product page will be very different in its nature to the kind of thing that's going to be relevant on YouTube, because for on YouTube it needs to not rely on that prior knowledge of what the product's about, whereas if it's going to be on like a product landing page, then it's going to be a little bit more focused on that specific, okay, I've got a vague idea of the product, and now tell me why this is a good thing for me to buy. So just that kind of the audience targeting, you've got to think about the use case of who's going to be viewing this, and that very nature of a different use case means the content has to be different. And if you're just pushing the same content out there, you're not implementing a particularly good strategy.
Yeah, I think that's a nice little point to touch back on too, is that video has a lot of legs. It can be re-edited in many different ways, and much more so than text. Can get you a lot more bang for the buck, for lack of a better term, out of that content. You
absolutely.
mentioned...
Sorry, just to touch on that one. And I think people often fall into this trap of, again, thinking video is like a unique, like a thing. And actually, if you go and create a load of content, it's not like it's exponentially harder to create 2 videos than one. If you create sort of a library of content and you have a good editor, or you can hire a freelance talent, then it's very, very easy if you just re-edit and chop that stuff up and kind of redo things and reuse all that footage. And you can even like buy stock footage to boof things up if you haven't got the resource to do like really expensive aerial shots or whatever. So it's just thinking about it as a media type. When you get that into your brain, everything becomes so much more simple.
Where is a good place to buy like stock footage like that?
Shutterstock.com is pretty good.
Okay. I didn't.
There's lots of good ones out there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, a lot of the good stock photo places also have good stock video libraries.
Right on. So you mentioned guest blogging a little bit there, not necessarily in this context, but that was one thing I wanted to talk about a little bit. I mean, everybody's trying to engage with bloggers, whether it's PR firms or everybody thinks they got to get bloggers talking about them. How can video be an asset in doing blogger outreach and in getting things shared? And I'm familiar with Unruly Media as well as just kind of a platform or a service that can help you promote things through bloggers, through their network with video. How should people think about video when doing blogger outreach?
Well, Unruly essentially is like a social seeding platform. So they will, if you're doing like a big viral video, then you probably want to use a service like Unruly. I think they're one of the better ones out there to essentially push that and seed it. It's not a case that you sort of make this great video and then just it magically goes viral. You have to really push it, and essentially that's seeding that through blogs, through seeding it through bloggers, and the people who go to those blogs will then sort of be able to watch those videos. But there's quite a high barrier to entry for that for any small businesses, because their minimum spend's about £5,000, so what's that, about $7,000–8,000. And yeah, so it's not like and that is like minimum spend. You need to be spending really more than that if you're doing anything significant. So, but if you're trying to do like, say, guest posting, if you're trying to get links, if you're just trying to engage with people, there's a few things that video can be useful for. One is like ego bait. So if you're going to interview somebody on video, like you're doing with me now, I'm probably more likely to share it because it will hopefully show me off in quite a good light.
Yeah.
And if you produced a nice quality video of somebody, then that's kind of right now got a competitive advantage to just interviewing with text. So it can be quite a nice way, and particularly if you can like get them into your office, if you've got a studio there or something, and you can and make them look really good and make them look professional.
Yeah.
They're obviously going to be very inclined to share that and share their knowledge. So that can be a great way to get something placed. Additionally, it can be a good asset for essentially like any content. If you've got that good, exciting content asset, it can be good link bait. And when you're outreaching, if you've got like an exciting hook and that interesting video, then you can sort of include an embed, which you can sort of attach a link to, or have a link in the supporting text around that embed. So it can be a good way to kind of scale guest posting. And people don't seem to mind if you're adjusting the unique text around that video, you can probably embed the same video on lots of blogs, and it's quite a nice resource to outreach with. What else can you do? You can do content curation. So if you can go and build a custom YouTube playlist and include that as part of a blog post for somebody. You can maybe do, if you're sort of if you're offering just a guest post that's like a thought leadership thing, then you could go and create a video like a Whiteboard Friday sort of video and include that instead of having just text, which might be an additional buy-in for a blogger that just gets all these hundreds of, hey, you can like guest post on your site 500 words about the best places to eat in Milton Keynes, and nobody like just that kind of crappy guest posting is now really, I think it sort of ends. So this is maybe a new way to get competitive advantage there, because not many people who are doing spammy kind of articles are going to be doing spammy video, because you need that thought leadership in some sense. And I think it's going to be a lot harder for people to go on Odesk and, can you write me a thought leadership? Can you record a nice informative video about X places to eat in this place? Because it's just harder to do that. So it can be a good way to get that competitive advantage.
Right on. Thank you. That's all good stuff. I like that. What about in like PPC landing pages? I guess using video more for conversion. This isn't something that I actually paid that much attention to myself, so I kind of don't know the trends or what specifically to ask. But people that are maybe deploying that in a way that you see that is effective.
Yeah, I mean, sure. It's like, it's a media type, right? Absolutely. The landing pages come in all different shapes and sizes, and video can absolutely be a good asset on that. It can, same as big images. I think it all depends on what you're trying to sell, case by case basis, essentially. But the way that kind of we're definitely moving is to encourage people to just think about video as a typical or essential element of any web page. And it's okay, so you've got your options, you've got your image, you've got your CSS, you've got your text, and think about videos as something else that you can have in there. It doesn't mean you have it on every page, but I cannot think of a specific type of page where video wouldn't potentially be a value.
Right.
And the way you might prioritize what you create is dependent on where you're going to get the best return.
Nice. Well, yeah, I think it will certainly continue to separate the fakers from the real in all aspects of online marketing. I think it's just it's a lot harder to fake, and it's a good thing, I guess. And hopefully SEOs can't ruin it, as you kind of alluded to before.
They definitely will. There's a lot of things out there that you can buy, like that will basically outsource the entire process for you, and maybe it will be like stock animation and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's going to be where the spammy video comes in, like these still images that are just turned into an MP4 file. I've seen that several times. I mean, it's not really in the spirit of the proper creation of the content, but that's how things are going to be spammed. Or like video infographics, they can be done incredibly well. They can also be done incredibly badly. We'll have to see. But I think interestingly that if you can provide that unique value, that sort of the thought leadership perspective in some sense, then that's where you're going to be doing something that other people can't beat you on, because you genuinely have that knowledge in your business.
Right.
Most people that's where it starts.
Most people are in industries where, I mean, no one else is going to jump out and do a Whiteboard Friday on their industry and video. I mean, they could just copy that idea right there. I have a small insurance agency, and I know if we did that for our industry, we'd be the only people that would do it for the next few years to come, and I think it'd be a great asset. So maybe we should go ahead and do that. But
maybe you should. Well, that said, I have seen companies do that kind of thing and do it badly. But interestingly, that's when they actually don't have the thought leadership credentials in the first place. So I think it's a case of you've got to work with your assets, and every company is going to have a USP, and you've just got to work out what that is and how you can specifically apply that, I think.
Okay. Well, cool, man. I know you make it out to a decent amount of conferences. What do you got coming up? Where are you going to be?
Next conference I'm going to be at is in the Czech Republic in November, called Marketing Festival. It looks like it's going to be awesome. Right. So if anyone's watching from Czech Republic, please do come on down. We're in Brno, so yeah, it should be a laugh. Nice. And I think that's it for the year. I've just got one more from the year.
Okay, cool. And I'm sure Distilled will be at a bunch of the upcoming events in the U.S., PubCon and all those included. So.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's quite a few of us out there, particularly from our Seattle office and the New York office. So yeah, I think keep an eye out.
All right, very good. Well, thanks for taking the time, man. I think it's a little different perspective we can get here on video for our audience. And I don't know. I'll let you know when it goes live. And thanks again.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you.
All right, see you, Phil.
Cheers.
Bye.